I guess you could say I haven't seen you since last year. Hey guys, what's up? How are you doing? Oh, yeah, I haven't been with this mic in a while. Hey, yeah, how you doing? Yeah, Happy New Year, whatever. So basically, you read the title. But first, let's talk about it. My Singing Monsters. What's My Singing Monsters? Well, basically, unless you've been living under a rock for half of the year, basically it's a mobile game that came back from the dead. That's nothing else to say. And I'm gonna try to tie a loose end or two about what the hell is happening here. Okay. So grab onto your fur corns. Let's start talking. All right. So first of all, okay. First of all, what the freak happened? Okay, I know that there probably is a video or two that kind of explains it, but this is my grasp on what's happening. Okay, so once you log into the game and you'll get all that stuff together, the moment you log into the game, you're just spawned on an island. You know, little fur corn greets you saying, "What kind of planet? Blah blah blah." You get it. You get it. You've probably seen videos of it, right? So, okay, so, but like it seems abandoned. Okay, so here's my theory. Okay. All right. So first of all, I'm just gonna start with I'm thinking that some apocalyptic thing happened, probably something like apocalyptic, I guess, some type of thing that happened. And my theory is that the Colossals. So if you've seen like the live stream or whatever, you know, or like the trailer, you know that there are these basically the islands that you're on are alive, and they're gonna make sound. So okay, so what is this? So meaning there was a time where they were awake, which probably makes sense on why everything's so silent. And when they're waking up, it's a rumbling sound, like you could see in the video there. It's like rumbling, like it's like an earthquake. That's my best way to describe it. It's an earthquake, okay? So my theory is that basically multiple monsters were basically these monsters were making music until the Colossals then went extinct, which then just sent them into hiding. That's why everything looks so boarded up and abandoned, because they were in hiding for years. Okay, now here are a few other things. What about one of the most popular monsters? Can we? Okay, so basically it's a volcano person. There's nothing else to say. There's really nothing else to say. It seems that she's been stuck in amber, and in her description says for who knows how long. So yeah, there's probably some apocalyptic event which then had her trapped in amber for all this time, which then left the islands abandoned for all this time. Okay, so now that we got a base ground, now let's start adding the layers of what's happening. I feel like people don't know this, but there are a lot of monsters that know English. Like, for something that supposedly is supposed to be a different universe, they know a lot about this human language. They even, in the costumes, have like human creatures and, you know, just a lot of stuff that you see with humans and people, right? In our universe. So, but also, MSM made a video about the rare Woo box, where basically it came to our universe, if that makes sense. And basically, it just learned about the human language, which then turned into the rare Woo box. Now, first of all, we're going to talk about how Woo boxes existed. Then we're going to talk about how these monsters know English. So my theory is the reason why the Woo boxes exist are due to the fact that they just wanted to make more music, and you know, instead of finding other monsters when you could just create your own, they decided to create your own. And basically, in the game, you have to fill up these Woo boxes to bring them back to life. Same thing with Wublins, but I'm gonna get back to that later. So okay. This probably means something. This probably means that that probably means like they're probably either controlling it, or that's what I thought for a second until I realized that I feel like they have sentience. So my theory is that since they have sentience, they probably have their own minds. The moment you awaken them, the moment you awaken and power up the Woo boxes, they they come to they get their own mind. And why I think they're more robotic is obviously due to their voices, and second of all, because with the Wublins, they say there's one named Brump, which is a weird fellow. We'll get to him later. He's telling us to wake up the Wublins, right? So, but with the Woo boxes, you have to power them up, not wake them up. So what I'm saying is that's probably that's probably why they're just creations made by the other monsters. What monsters though? The Wordos. Anyways, now it's time to get to the second layer of this story. All right. So here's layer 2 of the second layer. So we've already established that the Woo boxes were created by monsters. My theory is that they were created by the Weirdos. Basically, the Weirdos are the monsters that actually speak. They don't make weird sounds. They don't go bum or do they don't make any weird sounds. They speak human language. And a lot of monsters know about the human, basically human culture, human speech. So what I'm thinking is that, obviously, that we know that there was the one Woo box and the crowd of Woo boxes, which, aka, soon to be the rare Woo box, went to the human world, learned about the human language. Now, my theory is that, before he went to the human world, and learned human language and learned about culture, this is the Weirdos probably just made sound, probably didn't use their voice. They probably just made sounds. If that makes sense, they probably just made sounds like I don't know, probably grunt, just sounds of other monsters would make. Not speaking, but other sounds. Maybe they would have played drums, or they just wouldn't have made human speech. They wouldn't have sang. They wouldn't have put the singing in singing monsters. Until the rare Woo box probably taught the rest of the taught about the human world, human language, which then probably led to the Weirdos knowing how to speak and sing. But there are a few other monsters, such as the Wublins. There's another one known as I just forgot the name of it. My best way to describe it is my best way to describe it, okay, is basically just a thing of eyeballs, a vial of eyeballs. And basically, what I'm thinking is that this thing, after hearing about the human world, got curious because it said from radio frequencies it heard a few words, and the words it says is eyes, ears, nose, and toes. And also meaning that probably there are other Wublins known as Mulch, which is a weird frog-like creature that comes out of the ground. He just repeats the words get down, get down funky, words that words. So meaning that it didn't just stay where that rare Woo box, where the island that the rare Woo box was on, but instead it was probably with the entire world, basically the entire universe of monsters learned about human language. They were probably studying a lot about human language, human words, human food. For example, the food you can give the monsters are pizza, cookies, bread, which is stuff originated. It's no weird and even in Dawn of Fire, which is a prequel, you feed them coconuts and apples, which is food. And they're not eating weird berries like the freaking gulag berry, whatever the freak berry you can think. There's no weird berries or anything. It's strictly human food. So they're probably learning about human cultures and everything until the Colossals then went to sleep, and now after years of everyone of the entire world basically just being silent, you now basically bring the world back to life. Basically from these islands being abandoned and dead, you can officially bring back the monsters. Now this will also tie in with the Woolbox section, which we're about to get into. Okay, I'm just gonna say it. Okay, so basically, I'm just gonna say it. The Woolbox section, okay? So, what is a Woolbox? A Woolbox, we already told you, a Woolbox, a Woolbox is like a robot, right? It's kind of like a robotic being, which, taught the weirdos about the human world and human languages, which probably spread onto the other worlds, etc., etc. But this apocalypse theory actually fits with some of the Woolbox's designs, such as the Earth Woolbox. This man is strictly made out of trash. Now, my theory is that the Epic Earth Woolbox basically was probably falling apart, after the world basically ended, and then just started rebuilding itself with trash. Meaning that they do have human structures and human vehicles in this universe before basically, the world basically ended and the Colossus fell asleep, leading to the rest of them fall asleep. Which actually also ties in with the Wublins because you have to wake up the Wublins. The first thing that Brump says, which is a frog-like being, is "Wake up the Wublins, wake up the Wublins." So that's so basically, it's not too obvious to say that that's what you need to do. You need to wake up. You need to wake up the Wublins. I think that's kind of like you wake up the Wublins. All right, finally, technical stuff is back in order. So basically, we were talking about the Earth Woolbox. So basically, it was probably a common Woolbox, which slowly started descending, from trash and all that stuff. All trashy and nasty. Basically the thing was slowly falling apart. So it had to rebuild itself from a scrapyard with scrapyard materials. That's why it probably sounds like a truck. Meaning they probably had sound of a truck, and since it probably a voice box from a Woolbox, voice box Woolbox, try saying that fast 5 times, probably started burning out, so we had to replace it with a truck sound. Which, to be honest, sounds better. Alright, now with the Ice Woolbox, that's a whole new story. The Ice Woolbox, it was obviously originated from Cold Island. It was probably already a common Woolbox that just stayed there and basically probably went back to its box form, which probably sent it back to, being frozen. That's why there's so much ice and snow all over it. That's probably because the thing basically was frozen for years and eventually woken up to, sing. That's why the sound actually sounded like it sounds like a car trying to start in the winter. Okay? So if it sounds like a car starting in the winter, that means something. It sounds like a car that's trying to start in the winter, which means it's voice box trying to start singing again, And come on, imagine if you were it. Imagine if you had to sing, just right off the bat, just start singing after you were frozen for years. You can't blame them. Now here's the one where I was stumped. No pun intended for this next one. The tree. Wait, hold on. Damn, it's raining bad out there. Sorry, it's raining real bad where I'm at right now. So, yeah, if you hear that, the world isn't ending. There's no war happening. It's just real bad rain. Anyways, here's the part where I'm stumped. No pun intended. The tree Woolbox, the epic plant Woolbox. Now, my initial theory was that maybe it was just a Woolbox made, that probably got plants growing all over it. But here's the hard part about that theory. It's kind of obvious, but it's kind of hard to prove this, but basically, the thing is made out of wood. You could tell, it's not like the thing has, vines growing all over and you can see some rusty metal. It is all wood. Its whole body, it's wood. So, I was stumped for a second. Again, no pun intended. I was like, what does this mean? Until I just thought of it. What if this was a prototype? So basically, before they probably had the mini mind and they had all this cool stuff, right? Before they made robots, they probably try to make a prototype with wood, basically a wood one, or maybe maybe it could be one made by the poor. But I feel like a game about monsters singing songs would be talking about poverty. So yeah, probably not. So, probably not poverty. Probably my best bet is they were probably trying to make better Woo boxes. That's why there's the rare and epic Woo boxes. Because the commons, basically everyone had a comment at that point. The rares, that was basically the few Woo boxes that were brave enough to go to the human world. But the epics, that was them trying to get better Woo boxes, better Woo boxes, basically, right? Which they probably thought, before making it out of metal, let's make it out of wood. And then it successfully worked, probably. Then came the birth of all the other Woo boxes, which actually makes sense about the epic air Woo box. Yeah, I know there's a lot of epic. There's a bunch of epic Woo boxes. I know, and they all sound different. It's weird. So basically, this is the one that doesn't look like it's been sitting in a garbage pile for years. Okay, this one actually looks fresh and new. My theory is that this was one of the last ones they created till, the world basically ended right before their eyes. So, okay? So bear with me here. They made a Woo box that could fly. Like, I think that's kind of obvious, literally, like, the thing has wings. And my theory is that they probably made a Woo box to fly, but not just to make music. Okay, now this one is a stretch. It's a huge stretch, obviously. But before I thought logically, I thought it could have been used as a plane. Except we see that, unlike with the rare and there's a difference between the rare and common ones in the epics. The one thing that the rare and commons have in common, minus, their box form, is that they have actual hands. The other epics just have nubs, just have the weird metal nubs. These guys actually have like hands, like fingers. They could punch you and like grab you. They have hands. Yeah, they actually have hands. At least that's what I know of. The epics may also have hands, but I may not. I may have just never seen it. So, okay. So that probably doesn't make sense. So I was like, okay, Elijah, think common, think normal. And now my most likely theory for the air Woo box was probably it had wings just to probably be able to sing at multiple places. Until one more thing. This is the one that just makes the most sense, which probably is true. The reason why the Woo box has wings is because it's on Air Island. It's an island thousands of feet above the air. I feel now I just feel really dumb because I'm just looking at my past stuff like, bro, are you stupid? The thing has wings. It's on Air Island. The whole point is that you have to fly to get up there. And this thing has, so it's just, I don't know, it's probably just a way for it, in case it fell down, it could fly back up. Except this is one that we haven't talked about yet. The water Woo box. So, they probably designed the air Woo box for flight. So they can create it, send it to Air Island, and then have it, fly around, do all that stuff. That's probably also why it has goggles. Because people say, oh, what if you take off the goggles? What if those goggles are surgically on the thing's head? Like, what if the thing those goggles are its head? Which probably makes more sense than you think. Because again, these are robots. These aren't organic beings. Like, I think it's kind of, I feel like, yeah. I mean, with Dawn of Fire, we've never seen a baby Woo box be on the same hand. We haven't seen a lot of the baby monsters, so I mean, like, I can't really use Dawn of Fire as an example. Speaking of Dawn of Fire, we may get to the Dawn of Fire section soon, but right now, we're still talking about Woo boxes. So, water Woo box. Now, my theory is that, obviously it was a Woo box designed for underwater. You could tell the thing has, basically, well, the other ones were designed for, the other world, for, like, out of the water. this one is obviously designed for the water, which again pushes the narrative that they're robots. And again, you can't say, oh, it's just an underwater themed one. No, because if you paid attention to the background, you see multiple fish and jellyfish just just swimming around, meaning that the island is underwater. Which also makes no sense because also a part of it is the rare Woo box, which makes no sense. Okay, so here are my loose ends to what's happening. They probably have. My guess is that before they probably had some type of, because obviously we gotta also put magic into the mix. Okay, so let's put magic into the mix. They probably found a way to put Woo boxes, basically the robots, underwater. But before that, they didn't have that type of technology or magic or whatever. So what they had to do was what they had to do is they had to create a Woo box specifically designed for the water. And that's also probably why there's so much coral, because after the world basically ended, they had to have a place to live. Basically, the thing had to have a place to live, except it wasn't really designed for land. So it probably just sat at the bottom of the ocean, basically just getting coral on it. Alright, so those are all the Woo boxes. Now let's get to the Wublin section. Alright, so Wublin section. This one may be shorter or longer, but I just need to push this narrative, okay? So now let's talk about the Wublins. Basically, Wublins are these type of monsters that kind of like the Woo boxes, where they need to be powered up or woken up. Okay, now first of all, I'm just gonna get out the elephant out of the room before we talk about the Wublins. One more thing about the Woo box. There's a difference between a normal Woo box and the Wublin Woo box. Probably because I'll get back to this in a second. But first of all, I need to say that my theory is that Wublins have never had contact to any outside creatures, except for one. Here, let me break it down. Brump is basically a frog-like, tadpole-like Wublin that basically just repeatedly screams, "Wake up the Wublins! Wake up the Wublins!" All normal, right? Except look at some of the Wublins' color schemes. They're usually like shades of grays, whites, and if they're not grays, whites, then they're probably just they're usually not like bright. They're usually not like the brightest colors. Well, and even if they're not they all basically they all have different colors, but they're not. But usually the one you don't see the most is green, which is kind of weird to think about. Anyways, so my theory, and also the thing just doesn't look like it should be on Wublin Island. Same thing with Mulch. They just don't look like they should be there. They're kind of like just out there. And now we have to jump over to another theory. So there is another theory where there's a thing where Brumps actually eat Furcorns, which actually makes sense because first of all, we already know that the thing basically in the bio they say how the thing basically has legs to get food, which obviously you're probably a predator if you need legs to hunt for food. Like if you're a herbivore, you probably don't need a lot of legs. Like you probably need legs to walk from tree to tree, but you don't need like the legs like they have, where they can run fast. Second of all, in the Furcorns bio, it also says protect them. But I don't see any Furcorns on Wublin Island. Why? My theory is that they were pushed out of basically, almost the society. So basically, in my opinion, Wublin Island, looks decently adapted, but not really adapted, if that makes sense. Like I feel like if I had to put it in a time zone, Wublin Island would still be stuck in the 90s while we're in 2023. Get it? If you catch my drift. Basically, if you grab some kid from the 90s and show him technology today, he'll just go crazy. It's kind of like that with Mulch and Brump. My theory is that Mulch and Brump aren't from Wublin Island. Then where are they from? where fir corn's from. My theory is that fir corn is probably is stuck in two places, either swamp-like, forest-like areas, or they're in a more snowy area. So if you can see, their elements are snow and air, and basically plant. So my theory is that once the Brumps came in, they started using fir cones as food sources, which probably may have forced them to migrate more up north, where they knew they couldn't survive, probably because of the coldness there. Because most amphibians and reptiles, they don't deal with the cold very well. So what I'm saying is that they probably had to migrate up north, where they probably had to build more of a furry. They were probably furry for most of their lives, but I feel like they really actually used that fur when they had to run up north to protect themselves from the Brumps. Until eventually, the Brumps were outcast and they may have even been hunted, but then they only had one more place to go. They knew that two things: A, what human language was at the time. They knew what human language was, and B, is that the Woobox is a thing. They don't know about the rare epics. They already know that Wooboxes are a thing and they can get them. So they know about the human world, right? So my theory is that basically before everyone went to sleep and the Colossus went to sleep and the war basically ended, Brumps ran to Wublin Island, where the rest of them seem more primitive, right? They've never seen the outside world. Brump is their only gateway outside of the outside world, if that makes sense. Like, hell, I'm pretty sure it's so bad to the point that Brump could say the sky is purple and they believe it. Probably because they've never been in the outside the world. They've only been in their gloomy, bluish gray prison that they've been in all of their life. But who created this island? Because this isn't a natural island, like they said. The natural islands are air, which probably was messed with, water, earth, and plant. Meaning that monsters are creating islands. Because again, no humans here. So Wublin Island was probably about to be created to power up Wooboxes, due to the fact that basically they survive off of electricity. You want to know what else has to survive off of electricity? Robots. And what's a robot? A Woobox. So now basically it's all going together. Until eventually they probably scrapped the idea, or probably they probably just found a way of using other monsters to try to power up, to try to power up the Woobox. But one more thing. My theory is that instead of them actually putting the monsters in the Woobox, my theory is that they put parts of it in there. So maybe they'll put a little fuzz from a fir corn, or the tooth of a maw. Or, you get my drift, right? You get my drift, right? You get my drift. So, okay? So, basically, anyways, we're just gonna go back. So yeah, Wublin Island was created until they found out that they could use monsters to create. They could use other monster body parts, that could be replaced. And they could just use that to power up the Wooboxes, which probably left Wublin Island scrapped. And the monsters that were outcasted, or probably the monsters that just left society, went to live at Wublin Island. And what about Mulch? My theory is that Mulch is actually from Earth Island, but probably got kicked out for unknown reasons, or probably just left on its own. So doesn't have as much lore as the Brump. And then basically Mulch doesn't know as much either, okay? Mulch has probably been there longer and just forgot all about the outside world. So basically, Mulch, they're probably just creatures that just stayed in the dirt most of the time. Meaning, when they got kicked out, they probably didn't know much about the world. So they just kind of went back and just, in their dark environment, they probably popped out more because, they're in a darker environment, they're safer. At least, because, they probably can't do a flight well. Meaning, Brump, for someone that doesn't have eyes, probably knows more about the world than you think. And that's why the wobbling woo box is different from normal woo boxes. Because this woo box is the only quote unquote like monster on other islands. Because of that reason. Now we're gonna get to the finale part. Alright. So the theories for today were that Brump isn't from Woblin Island. Oh yeah, also before we finish, how about the Furcorn? They probably went back to Plant Island before the world ended. Okay, now that we're done. These are just theories. I want you to remember that. Wait, crap. I just want you to remember this. They're just theories. A game theory. Okay, I'll stop. Yeah, like, subscribe, do whatever, and I'll see you whenever. Goodbye.